The player was always a cartridge.
You are the cartridge!
Well, at least that's the theory. It's actually a pretty popular theory amongst the Miside community, and well, I've decided to cover that topic today. Spoiler alert, I'll be revealing some major spoilers. First of all, let's make this clear. According to this theory, there was a real player at some point, but the protagonist we're playing as now is not real, but in fact a cartridge. What I'm trying to say is the gameplay is just a memory of the actual real player being replayed by us. Let's start from the very beginning. Whenever we hit the new game, if we listen carefully, you'll be able to hear an odd clicking noise. That's most likely the sound of Yandarimita loading our cartridge inside the console and effectively starting the game. Now let's skip over to the end. The lag that we experienced during the epilogue was because of Yandarimita pulling out our cartridge. I may not be the biggest fan of reality here, but I don't recall anyone ever lagging like that unless you're having seizures or you're just paralyzed. The game begins with Yandarimita inserting our cartridge, and the game ends with her pulling out our cartridge. During the entirety of the gameplay, the cartridge was only copying the player's data, not turning us into one. And in the ending, Yandarimita literally says that the real us were no longer needed. This actually clarifies one of our doubts. When the game ended, the copied data of the player and the actual real player had been multiplied into two separate entities, which means at the end of the game, the real player successfully manages to escape to the real world while the cartridge copy of him still remains, which in turn gives us the slight possibility of our iteration of the game being the cartridge version. For your better understanding, let's compare this to a recorded play. All the things that we do throughout the game were exactly what the real player did, including the part where you take a peek at Yandarimita's underwear. As all the events in the game were past canon events, we, the actual players, cannot deviate from the decisions the real player, this guy, had already made. Why do you think our character pushes Tiny Mita away even though we refuse to push the button? Why do you think he automatically gets up even though I don't really want to? Because that's what he did. There's also the fact that people die when they're killed, but we don't die when we're killed. We get respawned to a previously saved checkpoint, which is an understandable game mechanic, but for the sake of the lore, let's interpret it this way. The cartridge held the data of the player surviving all this, which means the death that we experienced just now never happened. Every time we die, we get this glitch, a black screen, then we return to the previous checkpoint, because we weren't supposed to die according to this memory. Props to the real guy because he's an absolute unit for surviving all this in his first try. Now the monologues and the backstory that we get about our protagonist. Well, if everything is just a replay of what had already happened, then it's obviously a recording of our protagonist's thoughts and monologues during the time. Now let's talk about the cartridge inside the vault. There's actually a different way of interpreting those percentages that we see beside the console. The first time we opened the vault near the beginning, it showed 17%. The second time we get to open the vault, it shows 98%. And right at the ending, Yandarimita shows us that it's 100%. But let's rationalize it this way. What if it wasn't only the percentage of the player's data being copied, but also progression percentage of the total simulation, like the progression bar of this video? When it showed 17%, the story was near the beginning phase, or should I say 17% done. And when it showed 98%, that's because the story was almost nearing the epilogue too. Also, we can actually interact with our own cartridge. If we pull out our cartridge early game, we die almost immediately and the simulation ends. But that's just the boring stuff we already know. What's so new about this? Well, let me change your perspective. Literally. Let's take a moment to carefully think about this. There's no way for us to know about the code without finishing the game once. And in the game, there's no way for the players to know about that either. Because by then, the real player is already outside the game. And the cartridge, well, it's still a cartridge. So how did we spectate Yandarimita putting down the code and opening the vault? Well, this is the part where the conservative, "It's no FNAF, stop theorizing" types of guys will call me crazy. So as a way of giving a subtle middle finger to their faces, here it goes. We, the actual players, are conceptually Yandarimita. Now wait, stop typing whatever you're typing in the comment. I know I have a very tiny and small brain, but hear me out. In the main menu, when we hit the new game, it is actually Yandarimita who inserts the cartridge, and it is Yandarimita who pulls out the cartridge in the end. Kind of similar to how we install a game in our computer, play it, then uninstall the game. According to our theory, if the entire true ending was the real player's memory, then the other ending where we open the vault and unalive ourselves would only be possible if we actually retained the memory of seeing Yandarimita entering the vault's code. But as I said before, it wasn't possible for the players to see that, and we, the actual real players, are outside the fourth wall, so we aren't relevant to the story. The only possible entity that can manage to make a fourth wall inside the fourth wall would be Yandarimita. Remember what I said in the beginning, the game begins with Yandarimita inserting our cartridge, the game ends with Yandarimita pulling out our cartridge. Then what about the peaceful ending? Well, peaceful mode is still under development, and Umeerai said there will be an ending to it too, so at the moment I don't have enough information to comment on that, but I will say this just in case. Peaceful mode would also be the what if version aside from the true ending, which will also be canon. Two separate branches. One is where the real player decided to stay, one is where he decided to leave. Now, I'm aware that the peaceful mode required us to complete the game once, but quite frankly, at the moment of writing this script, I'm at my last 2 brain cells, so I will just end it by saying it's just the game function. Many other games like Tsukihime and Totono requires you to complete the main route before giving you the good ending, or I don't know, something like that. By the way, there are a few more things that might be related to the theory. Let's also talk about that thing that just crawls out of the matrix if you stare too long at the mirror. The design obviously does not look very human, and honestly, just looking at it gives me a form of existential dread. Why does something like that exist in said real world? More importantly, why does it exist at all? There's also the fact that we spawn in the 1.5 version when we get sucked into the game, even though we were playing at the latest 1.9 version. Let's jump over to the very beginning, before the game even got released. If you take a closer look at the official pre-release trailer of the game, you'll be able to see a message in the course terminal that says player creation and shows a random number tag. Well, the number tag specifically refers to the release date of the game, but that's beside the point. What my point is, the sentence player creation could mean that a physical manifestation of a player character is being made. Do you also remember the player who managed to make it to the core? In one of the walls, he left an encrypted message for the others. The community has managed to decipher the message using the index of coincidence and 0.98 as the index. Does that sound familiar? Anyways, the message actually says the following. Once here, I couldn't return home. I can't remember my life, and when I hear about the real world, I start to doubt if it really exists. There are a lot of other things that I probably should have mentioned, but the video is already long enough and I neither have the time nor the patience to research them anymore, so that's pretty much all I have to offer. My conclusion? We call it the loop/replay theory. The game is on a continuous loop of what had already happened during the time our protagonist was inside the game. From the beginning to the very end, it was all just the memories being replayed by us. Or should I say Yandrimita? Did you make it this far? Are you with me? Are you with me? Good, because the things I'm about to say now are only going to make things crazier. All the things I had just said, all the facts that I tried to accomplish up until this point could be debunked by this one single line of comment. The devs have already confirmed that the player is real. Well, GG's I guess. So why did I leave such an important piece of revelation near the end of the video? Good question.
Legalize nuclear bombs.
Swag Messiah.
All of this were just an elaborate and roundabout way of making fun of you guys who commented early without actually finishing the video. And those of you who kept saying stuff like, actually, the devs already said. I know what they said, and I acknowledge it, but that's just too easy, don't you think? Here's a fun little challenge for you guys. Take the developer's words outside the equation and try to debunk this theory with whatever is already present in the game. Try to prove us wrong without using the same simplification and overthinking excuse. Be creative. Simple comments won't do. Research whatever people said in the comment section, make a separate video, and I will gladly take the L. Just kidding, I just want people to make more videos like this about Miside. It would make the game seem a bit more interesting to others, and it will help get more exposure, which in turn will keep the devs motivated. Also like, subscribe, thanks, bye.